So today is crown molding day, and I am excited because my delivery came. I have a special plaster faced, how do you call it, styrofoam crown molding. It's pretty cool stuff, and it's really awesome for the DIYer because you can get amazing performance with really easy installation all by yourself. But I figured, hey, if I'm going to do that, let's do a video. We'll show the differences between doing the wood crown and that way, no matter which material you choose, you'll have the tools and the secrets so that you can be successful. So I went by my trim shop because I had to get some stuff for the windows, and I grabbed a couple pieces of wood crown molding. Now, just a word of warning, if you're using wood, remember, depending on the moisture content of the wood at the time that it gets milled, you might have differences in sizes as far as a finished product is concerned when you go to install it. That's the only downside to using wood. It is a little inconsistent as far as making really good miter joints. But that's what caulking is for. So let's get into it. So before we get started, I need to cut myself a cheat piece. And this is important because wood has movement and warp. So what you want to do is have about a 2-foot long section with an inside and an outside miter on it, so that when you're installing your wood, you can use that to help roll your corners just perfectly. I'll show you all this information in a second, but first, let's get this just done here. Most types of crown have a very similar property in the fact that they are designed to be a perfect representation of the angle no matter which way you install it, which means that the distance from the back of the fence to the front of the crown here and the back of the fence to the top of the crown here is exactly the same when it's installed flush against both surfaces. All right? Now you can double check with a tape measure, but what I do is I like to set my crown up, grab myself a black marker, because this just makes the whole day so much faster. And I'll mark my fence. Watch this. There's my line, okay? Now when I'm working, I know exactly where to set this. I just walk up, roll it until it's in position, and I can cut. The other thing you can do, now that it's in there nice and tight, you can set up your 45 line, going in both directions. All right? Now your saw is all set up so that you don't have to pull out the tape measure or roll things around. The last thing you need to know, and this is difficult, is the detail. Generally speaking, the beefier detail goes at the bottom and the slender profile goes at the top. So all this extra detail here, you want to keep that very consistent and make sure you pay attention to that, because if you're installing and you've cut it upside down, nothing's going to line up and it'll drive you crazy. So, okay, I'm making this really obvious. That's the bottom, that's the top. When you put it in your saw, here we go, you actually want to not cut it this way. You actually want to cut it upside down, okay? Now here's the secret. If that confuses you at all, stand behind your saw when you're looking at your cuts, and you'll be like, it just makes sense now. Because now you're looking at it the same way you will be when you lift it up and put it on the ceiling, okay? And it can get a little confusing, but you have to cut your crown upside down so that all you have to do is move 45 degrees inside and outside corner with the saw set up perfect 90. Now, as long as you do that, you'll be very, very successful. The last thing you want to do is this. Remember, the devil is in the details. And whenever you're working with finished carpentry like a crown molding and you're doing miters, the most important element is this. The saw is set to lock at 45 degrees in one direction, but you have to be 90 degrees here. So grab your square, roll your guard out, okay? Actually, I'll do it from this side. And then slide your square against your blade. If you have contact here but not here, then make adjustment in the back. You can't cut anything like that because none of your joints are going to line up. So just roll it back till it's perfect and then lock it in place. Now we're ready to go. You can use this system here to set your degree cut, but the reality is your little detail here that's showing you what angle you're at is in a set screw. And it may or may not be perfect. So it's better to always check with your saw with the square, which isn't going to lie to you, than something like this that can move around over time. So let's get to our demonstration. Now we're dealing with softwood lumber here, so we don't need to worry about putting blocking in behind the walls and that sort of thing. We can install this just with caulking and brad nails, guaranteed to be fine. But what you want to do is you want to hold your profile, put it up in the space, all right? And I'm going in inside corner, so you want your miter to be facing towards you. This one isn't very pretty, so I'm going to cut it again. Remember, I'm going to put it upside down, drop it on the fence really quickly with my lines. That's my location. I'm going to turn and cut. And just for fun, this is only a 10-inch saw. You don't need to have a big, powerful machine. You don't need compound miter, sliding, all those bells and whistles. $200 gets you a quality saw. Just be sure to put a quality blade on it. Find yourself an 80 tooth for finished carpentry. So I'm using a door and window latex caulking with silicone, which is an elastomeric property, so it doesn't crack over time. Oh, 1 second. I didn't open this thing up yet. This one's brand new. There we go. Cut the tip on an angle. Slide it in, and with latex caulking, there's nothing to puncture, so you just go right ahead. All we do is run a little bead right here on the bottom, okay, and then right on the top. Now I've got my profile sheet and I stick it in the corner. And you can see they both feel pretty flush to the wall and the ceiling, but they're not in the same spot. So what I gotta do is find that happy place where they line up. And if I have a gap at the top, if I have a gap up here, it means I need to roll this piece up onto the ceiling. And so now I've got the bottom at the same spot. I'll roll both of them together until the gap is closed. There we go. Now I've got it in position. Just take out the nail gun, shoot at the detail. That's not going anywhere. Now the way you finish that, of course, is just use a caulking tube, and you want to put a nice bead of caulking up here, okay? There we go. Now a lot of people fill their nail holes with the caulking as well. That's fine if your trim is 9 or 10 feet in the air. If you're only at 8 feet, the caulking is going to shrink and you're going to see every single pinhole if you're walking through the house, if you have a discerning eye. So I would suggest using more like a drywall compound or a glazing putty that you can fill all those holes that won't shrink. Now that I've shown you how the wood properties work, let's go do the other way. So here's my new product. This is Styrofoam. Now it's a pretty medium density Styrofoam, so it's actually a lot stronger than just the old white stuff you used to have in your basements, but it is plaster faced, okay? It's a spray-on application, I'm pretty sure. It's amazing because it can actually do curved walls, because it can twist when it's in its curved position. So awesome. The benefit for us is that it installs using drywall compound. That's it, nice and simple. So your butt joints are just square cut. Your miter joints, you just put mud in the corner and squeeze it all together and wipe it out with a sponge. Let's get to this installation. I'll show you how different it is and all the different techniques for cutting this one on the saw. One of the first benefits that you see right away is that these trims come in a variety of sizes. And because it's a Styrofoam, look at the length of that. That's almost 2 inches of profile contacting with the wall. That makes it incredibly easy to attach to the surface. Also makes it easy to set on your saw. You just literally set it in place and you know you're good, okay? There's no real variance here. If it's not tight, you'll tell. You just give it a little push. Good to go. Same thing applies though. Leave the majority of your detail for the bottom. And of course, we're cutting upside down. First cut we have here is an inside miter. I need a little bit more room. There we go. Set the saw to 45. Make sure your blade, of course, is 90 to the table, and off we go. So one of the benefits of using this material, you don't need the nail gun or the compressor, which means if you're a homeowner and you own a saw, you've got all the tools you need to put in crown molding. This is just awesome. That's just freaking awesome. I wonder if this is going to be big enough. Woohoo! Look at that. Okay, well, it seems that my 10-inch saw is just a hair shy. No worries. I have a knife. I can finish the cut with that. Awesome. Now this is a pretty large profile. You can get them a little smaller or a little larger if you dare. If you have a 12-inch saw, you'd be in great shape. Now, that's my outside corner. I first need to measure. Now there's 3 ways to measure inside corner to inside corner for crown molding. I would recommend taking a look. You can measure across the bottom and you can run past your corner and read the tape. In that situation, that would be 73 7/8. You can put it inside and bend your tape in and take your best guess. Or you can leave it like this and run it across, and you can take the actual measurement where it contacts the tape and then check your tape, and it'll have the actual dimension of the tape itself, and you can add those 2 numbers together. Depending on the situation, I use all 3 different techniques. But again, so this situation here, because I have inside corners, it's a lot easier for me to just run the tape right past. I'm going to go with 73 7/8. Good to go. So remember, you want to measure from the outside of this point. Okay, 73 7/8 is our number. This is the bottom. And once you get used to this, it'll move actually quite quick. 73 7/8. It's right there. And I also want to put a mark, it's an inside corner, coming back this way. One of the reasons I love having my saw on a stand is because when you have space confines, you can just slide it down and give yourself a little more room. All right, here we go. Again, set to 45. We can just bring this down. Now, because you're dealing with the material that's getting applied with drywall compound, all of these inside corners, even if they're not perfect, are going to be filled up and smoothed in with a wet sponge with the drywall compound. Even if you have to cut it and it's a little off, it's going to be just fine. All right, here we go. So now we have our piece of crown. Last thing you want to do is just go up and double check. If you've cut it a little bit too long and it's sitting bowed, then it's not going to adhere to the wall very well. That's going to be awesome. You really want to roll it around back and forth until it's snug in the wall, just like it was on the saw fence. Okay, and then just to help visually, you can make your marks. Here we go. Now we can put the mud on and stick in place. So now we're using all-purpose compound for drywall. Now the secret is this: when you buy your drywall compound, it actually needs to have water mixed in with it to make it nice and smooth. So if you're interested in that process, you're not familiar with that, you can click this video link right here and you can watch how we prepare the mud. But if you've already been through this process and you're in a renovation and you've been doing the drywall, this will be really easy. If you're not used to using a drywall knife, this could be challenging. Then I would suggest just start with a little bit at a time, okay? And you want to just kind of use it like a snow plow and then flatten it out, okay? You don't need to have too much mud here because it's just going to all end up coming out all over the ceiling and making a huge mess. There we go. We're looking for positive contact, and that's it. There's a two. Now you got 2 options. You can add the compound to the trim piece, or you can add it to the wall in the ceiling area. If you've already got finished walls and ceiling, you're probably going to want to add it to the trim. Be patient. This does not dry very fast, so you got lots of time to work with it. All right, so now we're going to start on the corner and follow the line that I put on the wall. We're just going to roll it in place. Okay. I'm going to put pressure on the top and the bottom just to make sure that it holds in place. There we go. Isn't that nice, eh? Unlike wood trim, this one, you want to just use a little bit of drywall compound to do your seam now. All right. Put that in. There you go. Okay, we just wipe all that in. There we are. Pretty. Same thing holds true. You can always come back when it's dry take your latex window and door caulking, put that on the bottom and the top, get a perfect finish. Now, we're gonna do the inside corner joint as well as a butt joint. Show you all those techniques as well, and then you'll be able to do crown in your house. So the only downside of this type of crown is because it's getting shipped to your home directly, which is not a bad thing, it only comes in 8-foot lengths. Now, because it does such a great job with the joints, it doesn't really matter, but you don't want to waste any of this. So my next piece is 8 foot and 5 inches. So I'm just going to reuse this golf cut here and start my next row. Wow, that's the only waste. That's a pretty good deal. Here we go. Now, because I'm going to be doing a butt joint here, I want to just do a little trim on this, make sure that my joint is going to be perfect. There we go. Now remember, this is an inside corner, so I actually want to put the compound all over the inside of that corner as well. Okay, and you can be liberal here. You don't have to worry about putting too much. The biggest danger here is using not enough. And we'll stick that in there. Roll the top up to close the gap. Look at that. Okay, I'm just going to clean that excess off with my finger. Now for long pieces of this trim, they're going to recommend you put some sort of temporary bracing in place. And that can be nails or screws just tapped in underneath. Or if you have some zip wall, you can use these. These things are awesome. Done. All right, I'm going to take my sponge. I'm going to work my corner. We'll be able to come back a little bit later. And perfect. And add some caulking on this at the ceiling joint so we don't get expansion cracks. But we'll also be able to use our latex caulking on the inside corners if you want to, but you could finish up just by taking a fingering of this mud and sliding it back up in that gap again, just like this. And that makes a really nice joint. Now that I'm happy with my corner, I'm just going to take a screw, put it underneath my trim here, give it a little love tap. Now I can take this out and use it on my next joint. Remember, the drywall compound takes overnight to dry, so you've got all kinds of time to get around the room, roll all your corners perfect, and then tack your screws in. I just like to use the poles as I go so nothing falls on my head. So here we are, we're going to do our inside corner. Whenever you're cutting a long piece to go into a butt joint, always do the angle first. Remember, the butt joint here is going to be on our left, but our piece is upside down, so we want to do an inside corner and give ourselves as much material to work with as we can. Now we're going to measure from the inside corner to the butt joint, 81 5/8. Because we're going to be cutting it straight, we can turn it around and lay it flat. That makes it a lot easier to measure. So I did my measurement based on the tip, it comes to here. But I really want to translate that measurement to the other side because that's where the saw will come in contact first. So I'm putting my square on here, making my mark. There we are. You can roll it up a little bit if you need to. All right, now I intentionally cut this about a 32nd of an inch too long. I like the idea of having just a little bit of compression to help hold it in place. Here we go. So we're gonna roll this in now. Oh, I forgot. Oh, ho, ho. Didn't put any mud on the end joint there. That is going to cause me problems. There we go. Okay. And just like we did the last time, That was well done, wasn't it? I just fell off my ladder, Matt. There we go.
Are you okay?
Yep, of course I'm okay. Fell off my ladder, didn't die. So now we want to put enough compression on these joints and position them so that they're both in the same place. Here we go. That makes it seamless. Wow. Here we go. That is beautiful. Love it. Not bad, eh? This is one of these things where I'd never tried this product before. I'm a big fan of working with wood, right? I don't even use MDF. I just like using wood. Now it's a little messy, obviously, but if you're working alone, super lightweight and easy to install. Like, I'm gonna have to finish this video off with coming back tomorrow to film the finished product after we've done the caulking and the paint process. And you're gonna be able to see in just a few seconds how amazing this finished product looks. Wow. Okay, so it's the next day and all the mud is nice and dry. So I'm gonna use my window and door caulking to seal up all the gaps. And then after a couple of hours, that'll also be dry enough to paint. We'll come by and do our first paint application. And then we're also gonna take our sanding sponge out and just go around looking for minor imperfections that we can touch up. Because if I can see it on a ladder, then I should take care of it, because there's a chance that I'll see it from standing on the ground. But if I can't see it on a ladder, then it doesn't exist, even if it's there. Here we go. Just have a nice angle on the tip there. And if you're pulling this way, pointing the other way, then you can leave enough material there that you can fill it with the concave kind of look. There we go. All right. Well, nice and gentle here. Just to put that cove line in there. If there's too much material, then clean off your finger. You don't want to just leave it on the ceiling and make a mess. Here we go. Now, once this is dry, we'll come back and we'll give it 2 shots of paint. And that's your opportunity after your first coat to really check to see if it's enough material there, or did it dry and shrink up during the process. If it shrinks up too much, you might want to put a second bead on there, because you don't want to have shadows appearing at that joint. It's really important to make sure that these little details are done really, really well, because that is going to be how you're judged on the overall performance. All right, so we are going to go and paint the trim now, and we're using a semi-gloss paint. And I know that I'm from Canada and y'all don't have access to Dulux. A lot of our European market does. In the United States, they're owned by the company called PPG, so they have access to the same technology paints, and they're probably labeled differently. I'm not familiar with it yet. I've yet to do a road trip and discover the truth about that. But if you're looking for comparable paint companies, Sherwin-Williams has a really nice product, and they're coast to coast all throughout North America. Benjamin Moore line is nice. Some of the paints are different and they function differently, so it's kind of odd there. But the most important thing to know is when you're buying paint, the quality of the paint really is reflected in the price. It's a pretty fair gamble that if you're buying paint at $20 a gallon versus $65 a gallon, you're getting value there and it's worth the investment. So I would recommend, don't be afraid to spend a little money, especially on trim paint, because this is one of these areas where if you don't have a good one, you're going to be doing 3 or 4 coats to get the coverage, and it's going to be too thin, and every brush stroke is going to have dots of paint flying across the room. So it's really a nightmare. Feel free to buy a good quality paint here. Pour about 1 inch into the bottom of another container. All right, and when I say that, I mean this. You can't paint from this can when it's full, because all you can do is dab the paint and then wipe it off. And there's no paint inside the brush. So with something like this, you can actually pound the bottom of that can, right, and fill up your brush. Now, when you're painting trim, you don't want to have too much paint on the outside of your brush, obviously. But I'm telling you right now, this is full of paint, and I'm going to be able to go and paint 4 to 6 linear feet of my trim with that, and I can carry it around with me. So I have enough paint in here to do the entire crown molding in that whole room. This is how you do it right. Okay, by the way, if you haven't seen our paint videos about the tools and stuff that we use, then you're really gonna wanna check that out. And the link is right here. All of the gear, my ladder, all my tips and tricks are in there. And we're gonna have links for all of the locations where you can pick that material up as well. So go ahead and check that video out. It'll be a lot of help to you. Regarding this, I really should have done a coat on this material before I installed it, but the reality is it got delivered late and I was getting a little excited to get the video shot. So now I gotta do 2 coats while I'm here. Having said that, the first coat is more of a base coat, primer coat, just to get coverage. The second coat is the finish coat. And after I do this first coat, I'm gonna go around and look for little minor imperfections, do a little sanding. I've got a couple of nicks here. These are actually dents from my saw guard. Lesson learned. And also going to take the brush with the sealing paint and do a new cut line, okay? Once I've established my line. Then the second coat, I'll come back and do a nice finished clean cut. My danger here is if I do a perfect cut with the semi-gloss now, I'm gonna have this painter's caulking on the ceiling unpainted. And what that means is that over time it'll gray and it'll start getting a dark line there. So you have to make sure that when you're painting, you always paint your paintable caulking every time. The only time that you're not gonna paint is if you're using pure silicone, but siliconized caulking will go gray. So I'm gonna get my first coat on. I'm not gonna be too picky about my cut line. I'm gonna come back with the sealing paint and then hit it again. And I'm not gonna show all that whole process for you. Here we go. So a little dab will do. Pound that into the bottom of the can. Get some paint in your brush. And look at all of that control, right? I'm not flinging paint everywhere. I'm not dripping. I don't even have a drop cloth on my new kitchen floor here. All right, there we are. I'm not painting like a wild man. I'm just trying to get that cut line in there. I'm gonna get some all over the ceiling and that's fine. After you get your first coat on, the texture of the surface gets nice and slippery and easy for the paint to glide around. While it's textured like this, you've really got to force the paint in. It's hard to do a nice cut line. So let's not be picky here. We just want to get it on, get some good coverage. Try not to get too much on the ceiling so then you don't have to do like a 3-inch wide swipe with the ceiling paint because that'll be noticeable. But to come back with the ceiling paint after the fact and just do a little bit of a trim line, it's not going to be an issue. Especially with all the downward light that we built into this house with the pot lights, which is one of the reasons why pot lights are so popular in the marketplace. All that downlight means people aren't looking up at the ceiling and allows you a lot of freedom for imperfections. Here we go. They aren't popular because they're sexy. They're popular because they hide problems. Every time the builders come out with a new product, the first thing you got to ask yourself is, what are they trying to hide? Because if they're not hiding something, they're not making any more money. They're not going to be bringing that product to market. Okay. Here we go. Okay, first coat. Looks pretty good. And from standing on the ground, you're probably looking at that going, oh, that's all right the way it is. But trust me when I say this, taking the time to recut the ceiling and doing a second coat and a little sanding in between, it's going to be absolutely marvelous. So here we go. It's time for the last coat of paint. Just take your sanding sponge out. Look for any issues there, like some dirts in there or anything like that. Sanding sponges are awesome because they'll follow the contour of the work. Make sure everything is perfectly smooth. Okay? And then same as before, push the paint in the brush. Don't want to use too much, all right? Now, there we go. We don't have to paint that lead edge on there the second time, all the way around. We just need to get a little bit on there. That's good. More importantly, it's the body of this trim detail. And you want to paint and stretch it out until your lines are gone, okay? You don't want to leave any lines in your paint. Now, most of these paints are made with technology where while it's drying, it'll blend, it'll soften up. But if you leave lines in your trim paint, you're gonna have lines there forever. And then it'll look really bad. So, Feel free. Less is more when you're working with trim paint. Just slopping on the paint will make a mess. Less is more, just a couple linear feet at a time. Work it back and forth. Now, I don't know if the camera sees this, but there's a bunch of lines here, so maybe it's just the lighting. But I can see them because I'm standing right here, right? And so I obviously had too much paint in my brush. I'm gonna just stretch my brush out and dry it up a little bit. I'm gonna come back and get rid of my lines. There we go. Okay, wow. Now, if you like all this kind of information and you find it helpful at all, give us a thumbs up. Ask your questions in the comments section below about anything, and I will answer it. And if you're curious to see about the rest of our kitchen project, the cabinets are coming on next. If you haven't subscribed and rung the notification bell so that YouTube will tell you when that video is up, then do that now as well. Otherwise, click the link here and you can follow this project from the very beginning. We'll see you in the next time.